What is up, guys, and welcome back to another video here on YouTube. Today we're going to break down a 3-bet pot I recently played on Coin Poker, and with the help of PLO Trainer we're going to analyze how both parties have played this hand. So without further ado, let's jump in. It's an interesting hand, especially with like how wide his ranges are going to be. Like, could we consider cold 4-betting this hand? Like, we could for sure. Depends on how aggressive we think this dynamic is. I like 3-betting. Sam has been opening a wide range of hands. So this one takes place at a 25-50 game with an ante. We have a 1 big blind, actually a 2 big blind ante, which equals $100 in the middle. And we have Sam Jazzykins opening from the cutoff with 10-8-7-6. Gets folded to us in the big blind, and we decide to come in for a 3-bet with ace, king, jack 10 with a king high suit. Let's start off there. We're going to jump into PLO Trainer, and we're going to review this with the anti-sims we have. So we go to 6max apps, and here we have a sim that has a 2 big blind ante, which is exactly what we're looking at. The cutoff will be open raising wider in this instance because there is an extra ante in the middle, so 39.9%. In a non-ante game, this would be around 30%. So there is an adjustment. 10% more hands are profitable to play. And 10-8-7-6 will be a pure open aside from the monotone version and the rainbow version. So GTO open back to the big blind. In the big blind, we will fold less than in a non-ante game because we are getting better than 2-1. Given that the raise size here is limited to only 3.5 big blinds and the official pot sizing would be larger. So the ante is not taken into account into the RFI raise sizing. We have ace, king, jack 10, single suited, and we're gonna filter for that. And as we can see, all the combos of ace, king, jack 10 single will be 3-bets, even the ones without an ace high suit. So over here we have a king high suit or even a jack high suit. All those hands are 3-bets. Now, one feature I like to use is the EV difference feature, which is right over here. If I unhide the EV difference, then the green number we can see displays how big the difference would be between calling and 3-betting. And that gives us an idea of how close the hand is between the two options. So with a king high suit, as we have it in our case, it would actually be half a big blind of a mistake to come in for the call. And that means that we definitely do not want to call. However, it also kind of depends on who you play against. If you play against a very tight open raising range, then you could argue that some of the hands, not ace, king, jack 10, but some other hands that are closer in EV difference might be better calls as an exploit. On the other side, if you do see someone open raising a tighter range, you could also just manipulate the RFI to MP. So in this case, we would face a 30% open. Let's say there's a cutoff, doesn't adjust to the anti-structure, and still opens 30% from the cutoff, then we would work with the MP range and go back to ace, king, jack 10, single suited. And now we see that even against the tighter range, we do have a 3-bet here. The EV difference this time is going to be a little bit smaller, but we still clearly favor the 3-bet. Could go different ways. I think... I think like the way he plays is pretty straightforward, so we can just check and then learn a lot more about the strength of his hand by just playing like that. So back to the hand. So far we are happy with the way we played this. We are 3-betting, and our opponent makes the call. The flop that comes down 9-5-4, 2 spades, 1 heart, and we have flopped 4 overcards and the king high flush draw. Now on 9 high boards, or let's say on 10 high boards and lower, you can actually play a strategy where you only pot, and you could also play a more complex strategy where you use multiple sizings. I would advocate to go for the simpler one because there's no EV loss, or virtually no EV loss, and it's much easier to play. So if we look into PLO Trainer, we go into the 6max framework, which is a framework that uses a single bet size solution, cutoff versus small blind, which is very similar to big blind. We're going to use the 9-5-4 board. And we will see here that we are only going to use these 2 buttons, check or full pot, about a half-hour range, once to pot, and then mostly stack off. And then there are some checks in there as well. Ace, king, jack 10 with a flush draw. So we say we have spades, is going to be a hand that at surface level mixes, but obviously we do not have the ace of spades in this case, so we don't have the nut flush draw. And now you can see that the majority of those hands want to check. There are some exceptions, and those exceptions primarily come from the situations. Actually, we have to give ourselves spades. Mistake on my end. Spades over here. Now we remove the ace of spades, and we will see that most of the hands will not want to bet. Apart from 3-spade combos, because those hands have more fold equity as we block more of the flush draws that our opponent can have. So the 3-spade combos definitely want to pot. And then there's one combo over here where we also have the backdoor nut flush draw, which also prefers potting. Aside from that, you have the 2-heart combo here that likes to bet. I think that is a hand that probably is very close in EV difference, and we can see that right away over here by hiding EV difference. We will see that the 3-spade combos, they lose about half a big blind or sometimes even more when not going for the pot size bet. Especially if we don't have the backdoor nut flush blocker, we lose about 1 big blind by not potting. So by checking, we lose quite a bit. And then if you look into the 2-heart combo right here, we are pretty much indifferent between potting and not. So the way I analyze these outputs from PLO Trainer is to understand that the main takeaway here is the 3-spade combos definitely want to bet. Big mistake if not. And then the other combos are pretty much indifferent. The other takeaway is on the left-hand side. So what are the hands that have the biggest EV difference that don't want to bet? We can filter by EV difference. And the biggest hand that loses here by betting, instead of checking, will be the Jack-10 suits. Like all these Jack-10 suits, they hate betting, especially when you have the backdoor nut flush blocker or the second nut flush blocker. Those hands do much better check calling and realizing their equity that way. And obviously, they're also getting it in the worst because you only have a Jack-high flush draw if you pot. So the big takeaways here are the lower flush draws without backdoor flush draws are just going to check. 3-spade combos are going to bet. And obviously, if we were to look into the nut flush draw, so let's say we are single-suited nuts. Let me double check the syntax here. So we have flush draw, any flush draw, double flush draw. Nut flush draw is NFD. Oh yeah, NFD. NFD. I think I got caught up there quickly with 5-card PLO syntax. So NFD is betting 70.4%. And now we're going to do the same procedure where we look at the largest EV differences. And of course, 3-spade combos definitely want to bet. Big mistake if not. And on the left-hand side, there's no combo that when you have the nut flush draw is actually losing a lot by going for the bet. There are some backdoor diamond blockers that you also kind of like having into your check calling range. But apart from that, there's really not a big loss. So the big takeaway here is going back to the hand. If you don't have the nut flush draw, you want to have 3 spades when you're betting. So we check, and then Sam decides to go for a stab for half pot. The way I would look at his hand, like the way my brain operates here, is I think he has no spade blocker and no pair blocker. And that makes, like those heuristics, make it very unlikely you want to bet. It doesn't even matter if you have a wrap or if you're completely bluffing. If you don't have a spade and you don't have a pair blocker, it's very unlikely you want to put chips into the middle at this point. That's the heuristic that I'm referencing in my head, and we're going to look how that matches up with the solution. So out of position checks, and now in position has the option to stab for half pot. And in this case, let's imagine we have a hand that has no, our hand has no spade, and our hand has no 9, no 5, and no 4. Then we are looking at only 12.6% of hands. There are some slow played aces. In fact, the cutoff actually slow plays quite a few aces pre-flop. Especially when you compare cutoff versus button. The button 4 bets a lot more aces. But anyway, the cutoff has some aces. Let's remove aces out of that range because aces is a value bet here on the flop. And we will see that we need a very special hand type to decide betting if we don't have a pair blocker, no spade blocker. Basically hands that are almost kind of like worthless, but at the same time they have a ton of blockers. So 7-6-6-3 with the backdoor flush draw is a hand that has a huge amount of blockers to the continuing range, so it's okay to bet. Let's see what the EV difference is there. Really not big. So you need a very special hand. And then there are some much more trashy hands that are betting like ace, 7-3-3, backdoor diamonds. The reason why backdoor diamonds are important here is because they block the check calling range. A lot of the hands that the small blind has that are a bit more marginal, but do want to check call, have backdoor diamonds in there, like marginal overpairs with backdoor diamonds, for example. So we block some of those hands by holding 2 diamonds, and we're basically not wasting too much value or EV with those hands by just going for the bet. If we just fire with a6-3-3, for example, and we get check raised, it doesn't really matter that much, or 7-7-3-3. So it requires a special hand. If we go to 10-8-7-6 and we remove the spade option, we will see that all those hands are going to be checks. We do want to have spades in this case because, you know, you will get check jammed sometimes, and it's going to be a pretty bad day with no pair, no spade with this hand, because there are a bunch of like combo draws that dominate you. Now, I can have 7-8 with spades. I can have 7-6 with spades with some sort of overpair that chooses a check raising line. So this hand prefers to go for the check back. Anyway, in this case, we go for the call. Quickly referencing this back to PLO Trainer. Do we want to check raise our no pair second nut flush draw? Probably not. It's too weak. Plays decent in the check calling line. And we will see that we had a slimmer of checks with the nut flush draw. Those hands are now check raising and getting it in. But if we don't have the nut flush draw, all those combos are in the middle. They will go for the call. We could also profitably bet and get the money in, but I think this is going to make more money. So when he bets, he has like something that he probably doesn't want to fold. On this turn, we're never going to fold. We're trying to like induce a free card sometimes with, you know, hands such as two jacks and hearts that he might, or spades that he might not pot, or, I mean, we have spades, but something similar to that. But now there's no way out. Like we're probably behind, but we have to get it in given the price. Now we want to set a turn place, but this specific turn in this specific node is not available in PLO Trainer. So what we have instead is a very easy workaround that is for free to use. So you can click on this call button here where it says AHK script. And what it does is it downloads a script that you can execute in Monker Solver and then run the turn sim yourself. Now, what a lot of people don't know, Monker Solver is a solver for 5-card PLO that you can use locally on your computer. Monker Solver has a free version for turn and river sims. So you can run turn and river sims on your computer for free, and you can download the ranges that lead you to turn the river here in PLO Trainer. So it's a really good combination. I'm going to show you how this works. So here's Monker Solver. Again, you can have this version for free. And what I will do now is I will just execute this file that I just downloaded, and it just automatically, without me using my hands, it's just going to flick in the ranges that are in play and set up Monker Solver properly. So here, I'm not using my hands, right? It's putting in the ranges that we need. And then from here, we can just casually say, okay, we're going to run a turn sim. And the pot in this particular case was, let's see how large the pot was once we played check call. 2,335, 2,335, 2,435. And the effective stack sizes are like this. So I'm just flicking this in here. I'm using full and pot size, like half pot size and full pot size bet sizings. And then we can just run the sim super easily and super fast locally. You don't need a strong computer at all to run turn and river sims and Monker Solver for free. What you need a lot of RAM power for is if you run pre-flop sims and flop sims, and that's why we have hundreds of thousands of sims in PLO Trainer that specifically focus on pre-flop and on the flop, because those are the most RAM intensive and the most expensive to run, because you need to rent a virtual machine or buy an extremely expensive computer that has 512 gigabyte of RAM or 1 terabyte of RAM, which I have. I bought these to run sims, but we also rent between 30 and 60 servers at all times to run sims for PLO Trainer since many years. So it's a very expensive operation to run these bigger sims, but turn and river can be run locally very easily. Now, what we can see here, it's very interesting, is that out of position on this 10 of diamonds is actually leading a huge amount. And that goes all the way back to thinking about how out of position is check calling with a lot of backdoor diamond hands that don't really like the 2 spades on the flop. So because the turn is an overcard, brings in a lot of relevant straight draws and brings in the backdoor diamond draws, out of position actually gains a good amount of equity here. We will see out of position actually becomes a favorite on the turn, 52.9% equity. And because of that, out of position wants to start leading, and the only sizing required here, or the only sizing relevant, pot. So ace, king, jack, 10 with turn diamonds or spades. Actually, there's one slow play combo, I suppose, on the top left there if we have both. But if we don't have both, but we just have one flush draw, we prefer actually leading and extracting maximum value from this exact spot that we're in. So here we actually turned pretty nicely. You can see we are a 70% favorite, and we prefer to just donk this turn and put maximum pressure on hands like this and extract value. But in this particular case, I decided to check, which is a mistake as we now know. And then Sam goes for the bet himself, which we were lucky, and the money goes in. We are not behind, and we win. Nice 10K pot there. And we are 70% favorite. We ended up winning this $10,000 pot. And if we look into the Monker Solver solution now for imposition, you will notice that if we type in 10, 8, 7, 6, no spade, we will find 0 combos because all those hands were supposed to check back on the flop. So you might ask yourself, how do we manipulate the range for imposition so that he has 10, 8, 7, 6? And that can also be done quite easily. We go back into PLO Trainer, and we're going to manipulate now the in position stabbing range. So in position had this range. We'll see here in a second. The half pots has bet these 40% of hands. We're going to click this button, and we're going to copy this range to clipboard. Now it is exporting the range here at the bottom, and we're going to use, it says could not. Sometimes when your cache is full, this sort of problem occurs. Then you just click save on file or save as file. And that is a workaround. And so here we now get the range, right? These are all the combos and the weight of those combos that PLO Trainer has exported. And all you do now is you just add with a comma the 10, 8, 7, 6 at the bottom. In this case, if we look back at the hand, he had none of the flush draws, but had a 7 of the turn suit. So in the actual sim, it was like he has no spade. So we're going to give him, in the term of diamond, we're going to give him like hard diamond club, right? So we're adding this into the range. We go back to Monker, and we go to ranges and say in position now has the same range, but he has this little add-on at the end, which is this one combo that wasn't in there before. We run the turn sim one more time. And again, this helps us to manipulate the in positions range to now having that hand in there. So 10, 8, 7, 6, no spade is now in the in position player's range. And we can see how the solver would suggest playing it versus a check. And you will see it's relatively close. Like the solver is still deciding through iterations to trial and error which option has more EV. So it's using this combo to go for bet and for check, and is comparing all the possible outcomes. We're talking about billions of iterations to figure out which option is better. And you can already tell it definitely leans towards checking here on the left-hand side. But because it is a little bit indecisive here in the beginning stages of the sim, you can tell it's going to be a close one, especially with the 7 of diamond block or to the backdoor flush draw, but probably favors the check back on the turn. So that is a straightforward way to analyze this hand.